The ridge was silent, except for the colonel's voice in her ear, telling her to hold her fire. Captain Elena Rourke lay prone in the dust, her body molded into the earth as if she'd grown from it. Through her scope, the world narrowed to a shimmer of heat waves and the hard lines of an enemy compound. Her spotter, Sergeant Liam Torres, crouched beside her, rangefinder pressed to his eye, his breath measured. 3,598, he whispered. Wind, 8 knots, left to right. Rourke made a small correction on the elevation dial, feeling the subtle resistance under her fingertips. Every motion was precise. She didn't look away from the mil-dot reticle, locked on a cluster of figures moving in the haze. The radio crackled. Falcon. To Viper, observe only. Range is too far. Hold your fire. Colonel Marcus Hale's voice was clipped, absolute. Protocol in a single breath. Rourke's jaw tightened. She didn't argue, not yet. Beside her, Torres exhaled slowly. Orders are orders. Orders are one thing, she said quietly. What they're about to do is another. From above, a second channel cut in. Hawkeye to all units, drone feed live. Hostiles spotted. Corporal Dana Brooks was watching from the sky, her drone circling high above the compound. Her tone was sharp, a nervous edge behind professionalism. Multiple hostiles assembling equipment. Looks like heavy tube, possible mortar or launcher. Estimated firing prep, 2 minutes. The words sank like lead. Rourke's eye never left the scope. She could see the rhythm of hands fitting steel, shadows bending over ammunition. They weren't training. They were building death. Torres cursed under his breath. They're pointing that straight at Keene's boys. Downrange, Major Richard Keene's squad was pinned in the ravine, hidden behind jagged stone. Rourke could picture them from memory. 10 soldiers exposed if that launcher fired. On the radio, Hale's order snapped again. Falcon to Viper, you will observe. No engagement at this range. Do you copy? Torres leaned close, voice low. 3.6 clicks. Colonel's not wrong, Elena. Nobody makes that shot. She adjusted the reticle, her breathing steady, unhurried. The figures in her glass sharpened and blurred with the heat. Nobody tries, she said. Torres looked at her, the scar across his cheek tight in the morning sun. He knew the numbers as well as she did. Bullet drop near 120 meters, travel time pushing 10 seconds, crosswind like an invisible wall. But he also knew the steel in her tone. Viper, copy, she said into the mic. Her voice was calm, clipped, obedient on the surface. But inside, the storm built. Brooks's voice came back, urgent now. Falcon, hostiles are locking the tube. 1 minute until firing readiness. Forward unit exposed. Rourke's hand hovered above the trigger guard, not touching, just feeling the gravity of the choice. Her mind raced through calculations. Wind drift, air density, angle of incline. The numbers lined up like beads on a string. Colonel Hale filled the net again, firm and final. Falcon to all units. Forward squad to displace. Move them back now. Static followed. Then Keene's strained voice. Iron hand to Falcon. Negative. Too hot to move. We're pinned. Rourke blinked once, her heartbeat steady in her ears. She could see them. The blurred shapes aligning the weapon, hands adjusting the tube's tilt toward the ravine. The forward squad had nowhere to go. Torres muttered, if that tube fires, they're gone. He adjusted his spotting scope anyway, his loyalty stretching between orders and the woman beside him. Winds shifting. Call is left 0.5. Adjust 2 clicks. Rourke dialed the correction without hesitation. The silence on the ridge grew heavy, every second a drumbeat counting down. Orders were a weight pressing against her chest, but the sight through the glass told a different truth. She was the only barrier between the enemy's hands and her own men. Brooks' voice cut in, sharp, hurried. Hostiles loading round. 30 seconds until fire. Rourke's breathing deepened, each inhale anchoring her body against the earth. Her finger rested close now, no longer hovering. She could feel the rifle like an extension of herself, a line stretched taut across the valley. Torres glanced at her, saw the resolve in her eyes, and looked back to his scope. He didn't tell her to stop. He didn't remind her of the colonel's voice. He just said, steady and quiet, "Echo confirms target locked." And in that moment, she knew the battle had shifted, not in the compound below, but on this ridge between obedience and instinct. The enemy raised the tube. The countdown hit its last breath, and Captain Elena Rourke prepared to do what she was told was impossible. She whispered almost to herself, "Too far means nothing." Her finger hovered near the trigger as the colonel's final warning cracked in her headset. Captain Elena Rourke lay still, cheek pressed to the stock of her rifle, her breathing slowed to a measured rhythm. The custom .408 bolt action felt fused to her bones, its weight anchoring her against the ridge. 3,600 meters separated her from the target below, but in the glass of her scope, distance collapsed into trembling silhouettes. Heat shimmer bent their outlines, but she could still see the shape of the launcher angling toward Major Keene's trapped men. "Falcon to Viper, do not engage," Colonel Hale barked again. "That's an order. Stand down." Rourke didn't reply. Her eyes remained fixed through the reticle, her hands tracing adjustments like a ritual. The elevation knob clicked under her fingertips. At this distance, the bullet would fall more than 100 meters before reaching its mark. Coriolis drift would push it inches off course, spin drift a touch more. To miss by a breath was to lose it all. Torres shifted beside her, rangefinder steady in his grip. His tone carried the weight of doubt, but also of loyalty. "Elena, he's right. It's beyond limit. No one's ever." Iron hand to Falcon. "We won't make it out without cover fire." Major Keene's voice ripped through the net, jagged with desperation. In that instant, silence fell heavier than the colonel's command. Rourke's heartbeat slowed, steadier than the seconds she was burning. She adjusted again, the reticle centering on the hostile gunner preparing the round. Her whisper came out even, mechanical. "Wind left .5. 2 clicks." Torres froze, then obeyed. "Echo confirms. Left .5. 2 clicks." He adjusted his spotting scope, voice quiet but firm now. "Elevation still high. Drop another mil." She complied, her body flowing through each movement without hesitation. The world shrank to her crosshairs, the compound below, and the men she couldn't see but knew were about to die if she failed. Colonel Hale's voice returned, sharp with anger. "Viper, you so much as touch that trigger and I will end your career." "Court-martial, do you copy?" Rourke exhaled slowly, lungs emptying until only control remained. "Copy," she said flatly, though her hands told another story. The reticle held steady on the hostile's chest. Mirage flickered, but Torres called it clean. "Still center, no shift." Below, through the haze, the enemy locked the round into the tube. It tilted skyward, angled toward Keene's men. Time was gone. Hale's fury filled her ear. "Viper, I said stand down. That's an order." Rourke's finger brushed the trigger guard. Not yet. One more calculation. "Spin drift, right .2. Torres hesitated, then whispered, "Spin drift confirmed. Right .2. She adjusted, every motion quiet defiance. The risk wasn't just distance now, it was open rebellion against command. "Echo," she said, her voice low, steady as stone. Torres looked at her, then at the scope. He gave the slightest nod. "On my mark." The words split the air like a second gunshot. Protocol shattered in that breath. Torres knew it, Hale knew it, and so did Rourke. The colonel's voice thundered in the net, almost desperate. "Viper, stand down. Do not." But his words were already too late. Rourke had made her decision. Her finger settled into the curve of the trigger, pressure balanced between life and nothingness. She whispered the last of her corrections. a mantra carried on calm breath. 3.6 kilometers, drop 120, left point 5, spin right point 2, 9 seconds. Torres's voice came, soft but resolute, a soldier's oath given in a single word. Send it. Rourke's eyes narrowed, her focus absolute. In that moment, the ridge, the colonel, the consequences, none of it mattered. Only the shot. Her muscles coiled, her body became the rifle. Every calculation was locked, every breath counted. The impossible no longer belonged to theory. It belonged to her. And as she began to squeeze, the future narrowed to a single trigger break, its echo destined to carry across miles. The shot left the barrel like a whisper, vanishing into 3,600 meters of doubt. For a breathless moment, the world was still. Rourke's hands stayed welded to the rifle, her cheek pressed to the stock, her eye locked behind the scope as if sheer will could carry the bullet across the sky. Torres, crouched low beside her, never shifted his gaze from the spotting scope. He was counting seconds in silence, lips moving, refusing to let his own anticipation escape. The bullet cut through morning haze, a .408 slug arcing invisibly across mountains of air, fighting wind shear, spin drift, and gravity. Over 9 seconds of travel time, long enough for a man to pray, long enough for Hale to issue another order, long enough for Keene's men to either survive or fall. Rourke breathed in, then out, slow. She knew the math. She had trusted it, committed it to instinct when most would call it madness. The drop alone was nearly 120 meters. Without the adjustments for Coriolis drift, the round would miss by feet. Without Torres's final call on wind, it would sail harmlessly into dust. Yet she had sent it anyway. Downrange, the insurgents heaved the heavy weapon into place. One figure stood braced at the controls, another feeding ammunition into its waiting mouth. They had no idea a bullet was already racing toward them, unseen, unstoppable. 3, 2. Torres's whisper was taut with tension, his eyes frozen to the reticle. Rourke didn't blink. She refused to. The seconds dragged like hours. Then, without warning, the gunner jerked backward as if yanked by an invisible hand. His body folded in on itself. A fine mist of dust and heat shimmer blurred the scene, but the collapse was unmistakable. The heavy weapon clattered uselessly to the side, the loader scrambling away in panic. Impact! Target down! Torres snapped into comms, voice breaking with adrenaline. Falcon to Viper. Echo confirms. Radio silence held for a heartbeat. Then Major Keene's strained voice erupted, ragged but alive. Whoever that was, you just saved us. Goddamn beautiful. Rourke finally allowed herself to breathe. A deep exhale, steady, quiet, her pulse slowing to something like normal. She pulled the bolt back with practiced calm, brass casing flicking into the dirt beside her. The rifle settled back onto its bipod, heavy, inert, as though it had never spoken at all. Across the net, Hale's voice returned, brittle with disbelief. Falcon, confirm your last transmission. Confirmed, Torres replied, tone flat now, protective of Rourke. Shot recorded at 3,600 meters. Target neutralized. The line went dead for a long second. When Hale spoke again, his words carried a weight that was half rebuke, half awe. That shot was too far. No one should have reached it. His pause was heavy. And yet, you did. Rourke didn't answer. She kept her eyes on the compound through the scope, scanning for movement, making sure the forward unit's threat was truly gone. To speak now would have been to admit to defiance, to claim glory she never wanted. The silence was her shield. Torres leaned closer, his voice low enough only she could hear. Hell of a shot, Ash. History won't believe it. She adjusted her dials back to neutral, hands calm as though nothing extraordinary had passed through them. History doesn't need to, she murmured. They just need to make it home. On the valley floor, Keen's men broke from cover, rushing back toward safety under the shield of her impossible reach. Their figures grew smaller in the scope until they were only shadows disappearing into terrain, saved not by orders but by instinct, trust, and one defiant trigger pull. The ridge fell back into silence. The wind still whispered at 8 knots across their position, tugging at her hair, cooling the sweat on her brow. The only sound was the faint metallic tick of the spent casing as it cooled in the dirt. Hale did not speak again. Neither reprimand nor praise followed, just the void of radio static, thick with unspoken weight. Rourke leaned back, finally lifting her face from the scope. Her eye was red-ringed, skin pressed raw where glass had dug in during the shot. She rubbed it once, then let her hand fall into her lap. Torres was still staring at her, half grinning, half shaken. "You realize you just rewrote the book," he said. She shook her head slowly, gaze fixed on the valley that now lay quiet and unthreatening. "No, I just turned a page." And for the first time that morning, she allowed herself a small, weary smile, knowing that what had happened here would never truly be recorded, but it would echo in the memories of those who heard the shot and lived because of it. The echoes of her defiance still lingered across miles of air, and somewhere in that silence, Hale's voice, whether in anger or reluctant respect, would have to speak again.